presidential immunity, as Sarah mentioned. That ruling will then help us understand or learn whether there's a chance that Jack Smith will have his January 6th trial with Donald Trump here in Washington before the election or ever. I mentioned it's a quiet day in Washington. You should come on down. I guess the mall's kind of busy. But, it's one of these days where the lawmakers are gone. The president's in Italy right now. You can kind of do whatever you want downtown, if you can brave the heat. This is our first 100-degree weekend here in sweltering Washington. And while I like to turn to Nathan Dean at Bloomberg Intelligence for his insights and prowess on all things policy, he is also the arbiter of where to cool off, where to find valuable air conditioning if you're in the Capitol. It's good to see you, sir. This is a valiant effort here. I saw this note you put out. Happy Friday, by the way.
Thank you.
A good place to get AC and hydration break if you're down in the National Mall, right? You're going to come to Washington this summer. Maybe you're here now. I think, by the way, the best thing you've got going here is the big coffee shop under the National Art Gallery. Pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, we put out a note every Friday to our clients, and this week we were trying to have some fun with it because it's going to be 95 degrees, 99 degrees next week. So we asked the team, we're like, where would you go get coffee, or where would you go get a hydration break? And that coffee shop under the National Art Gallery, and don't be intimidated by the metal detectors at the Ronald Reagan building.
Right.
So there's a lot of great
And the
places.
Waldorf Astoria lobby, Pennsylvania Avenue, the old post office museum became the Trump Hotel. And I still see people, there are tourists out there taking pictures of that thing all day, every day, even though it doesn't say Trump in front of it anymore.
Well, absolutely. And just remember, it is the post office. So you can go to the top of the post office.
That's true, yeah.
And it's much quicker than if you were to go to the Washington Monument. You get a very similar view.
Oh, we need to do, James, we got to do a whole inside Washington, Nathan's bus tour. Exactly. We're going to follow up on this. You could get a real franchise going here, even though there is actual news. And it's been one of these weeks with so much going on here, we haven't had a chance to talk about FDIC. That might have been our lead story in another day, knowing that this is a very troubled agency. There was an inspector general's report that showed the culture was rife with harassment and unsafe, if I can use that term, conditions at work. It's time for a new leader.
Yeah, so this week we saw the White House nominate Christy Goldsmith Romero, the CFTC commissioner, to be the head of the FDIC.
This a promotion?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a promotion. I mean, she goes from being essentially an assistant. I don't want to call it an assistant commissioner, but
okay, sure.
The chairman is the person who drives the agenda at the CFTC. And over the past couple of years, she's shown that she has been somewhat off, a little bit different in terms of priorities compared to CFTC chairman Rostin Benham. Now, over at the FDIC, she's going to have a couple of issues. One, she's going to have to take over the Basel III endgame. That's most important to markets and to the banks of what is the FDIC going to do there. I don't think she's going to change really the narrative of the Basel III endgame, which we've talked about multiple times. The other thing she's going to have to do is clean house because this report that came out, there's a very much toxicity of culture over at the FDIC, but she has experience doing this. She was the special inspector general for TARP for so many years under both Presidents Obama and Trump. And she has experience cleaning out, essentially bad actors. Now, I will say that this could transform a little bit into examination risk. So if you're a smaller bank or if you have exposure to smaller banks, think $10 billion in assets, there could be some additional enforcement issues coming out in the next few years, but we really just don't know.
Fascinating. Are you getting phone calls about this? Is this an investor concern?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Really, the big question is what happens here with the Basel III endgame.
Sure.
Because the Fed vice chairman has said, this is Michael Barr, has said that broad and material changes are coming to the Basel III endgame. Now, the question that we're getting now is, will Christy Goldsmith Romero, if she gets confirmed, which is, again, is a big if she gets confirmed by the end of the year, does that change the Basel III endgame equation? I don't think it does. I think that when she comes, if she's confirmed before the Basel III endgame comes out, she'll show up. She'll look at the work the OCC and the Fed and the FDIC staff have already done and just said, unless there's any huge omissions there, I think she'll just support it and move forward.
Remember a year ago, year and change, bank failures, every show, what should be deposit insurance? Should we increase the level? The FDIC, something had to happen. Nothing happened. Will it ever?
No.
Okay.
And what I mean by here is that, there was a lot of debate over that $250,000 threshold. So if you've got money in any U.S. bank account, know that $250,000 limit is protected. Now, we did see some legislation coming out. Maybe we increase the limit for transaction accounts or business accounts and so forth. But remember, if you increase that limit, who pays for it? It's the banks. And so I don't think the banks were actively saying, hey, don't do this. But when Congress began to look at other shinier things, the banks certainly said, we'll just let them look at something else. And I don't think there's going to be any movement on this.
And with
soon.
no more failures, the urgency went away. There was some calling for unlimited insurance, as I'm sure you remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
It stays at 250.
Yeah, it's going to stay at 250. I think there's going to be some additional, look, I mean, the way it works is that if there is a bank failure, there is a special assessment. And for Signature Bank and for Silicon Valley Bank, it came around to $20 billion.
Yeah.
Now, look, for JP Morgan and Bank of America, that's not something to be taken lightly of. I mean, that's several $billion or hundreds of millions of dollars that they're going to have to pony up. But if this only happens once every 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years,
Change policy over there.
it's not going to change policy.
Try to stay cool this weekend.
Likewise.
It's 100 next week. Is that the forecast? We're like 95 this weekend?
Tuesday through Friday, I think it's going to be 100.
All right.